Hello everyone, welcome back to the Voidless Devlog. This is the aftermath of week 1 of development. So during the weekend I made all of the boring menu stuff, and I also added some platforms, ladders and fans, and I further polished the gameplay up a bit. Not very interesting. But what you see right now is what I later did on Sunday, a bit of the art style. I wanted to have the player be very clearly pixelated, but the rest of the environment to be completely vector-based and natural looking. So, instead of just painting all of the parts of the art style myself, I decided to code an algorithm to basically arbitrarily draw every single part of it. So, I started with the dirt, and for that I used drawing primitives in GameMaker. So in the room start code, I check through the entire tile map, line by line, and when I encounter a single tile, then for that entire row, I create one instance, which basically creates a surface in which it draws the dirt, and then it just stays there and continues drawing that surface. And I chose the triangle strip primitive type, which is, well, you can see over here what it looks like. So in the actual code, I drew vertices in a sort of zigzag pattern, moving along a random amount of steps on the x-axis, and adding a new vertex on the y-axis, also randomly. And then I added a shader to add a bit of noise. And later I also drew in some circles of different colors to make it a bit more varied. But later I changed that. Then the first version of the grass that I made was actually made out of thousands of separate grass instances, which all had their own angle, and depending on whether the player was standing on it or not, it would either go down a lot or it would just wave around in the air. This was incredibly laggy. This footage that you see right now is played in real time. It's not slowed down. So I later had to optimize that a bit. And of course I also made some clouds in the background. I made this using a Perlin noise shader, which I found online on GitHub. Then I added some post-processing effects. I changed the hue and I tweaked the hue and saturation a little. Basically, I multiplied the red and green channels by 1.4 and the blue channel by 1.2. I also drew a sun in the background, and I had another shader for lens flare that I also found online on shadertoy.com. I also did a little thing there where if the camera is behind a wall, then the sun's alpha will rapidly decrease, and with that also the amount of hue or lightness in the scene. So basically everything becomes darker if you're behind a wall. So that was kind of cool. I also made a new sky, which will basically use the same shader as the clouds, but this time changing it from blue to teal or to green or to slightly purple sometimes. The next thing I did is I optimized the grass, and for this I actually swapped from making 1000 instances for every blade of grass. I made one big instance which would cover the entire grass bunch, and it would draw a primitive similarly to the ground, except it would only draw it if the player was standing on it, and then it would also automatically update. Depending on the player's location, it would move down singular blades of grass to create an effect as if they're just pushed down by your feet. But if the player is not standing on them, then it's not gonna update the surface. It's just gonna draw it normally, and it's gonna apply a wavy skewing shader that I made myself. I also recreated the doors. Now they're simply drawn with 2 rectangles and 2 circles. The black one inside of the black ones inside of the brown ones. Next, I added some roots below the ground, And these were basically lines of random widths going in a random direction and decreasing in width every time. So that was quite simple to do. And I also didn't make them interactable because it's really rare that the player will just graze along the very top of a wall or a ceiling. And I also changed the ground from just drawing dots to actually implementing that into the shader, using once again the Perlin noise shader. And in addition, I used that same Perlin noise again to kind of make some areas of it darker than others. So, and I did that because sometimes it would draw those circles beyond the actual ground itself, which would look quite bad. And also because I wanted to make backgrounds with using basically the same shader as before, and if I had just used the previous algorithm, it would draw the circles on the entire rectangle, and that would look even worse. Next, I made backgrounds. So these would basically use the same shader as the ground, except I wanted to make them kind of I wanted to make them not in lines, because as I already said, I draw the ground in separate lines, whereas I wanted to draw the background as a big chunk, because otherwise it would probably take up a lot of memory to draw. So for that I used paths, and actually it was really simple to do. All I had to do is draw another triangle strip, starting from the very first point and then moving through the next ones and adding vertices there. The only thing I had to do was to make sure that the path was in such a zigzag pattern. And then finally I made some wood, and I made automatic drawing for platforms and ladders. That's what I did today. And for the wood, I basically drew lines at regular intervals, except they were offset by a random amount. And I also made the code for it to draw little divots in the ground every now and then, like little cracks. And for the platforms and ladders, it was basically like a line, except it went down at irregular intervals. And that's it. That's all that I did during this week. Next week, I'll probably get onto making some actual level design, now that I have the tools to do it. And maybe after that, I will implement some story elements, dialogue, some characters. Yeah. Thank you for watching.